The Milgram Experiment by Grady. Introduction. What is the Milgram Experiment? How does the Milgram Experiment connect to the novel Night by Elie Wiesel? What significance does the Milgram Experiment have? Today, we will answer all the previous questions. I am Grady, and this is the Milgram Experiment Crash Course. Part 1. What is the Milgram Experiment? The Milgram Experiment was a study about understanding what factors led to the infliction of harm on others that was conducted by Stanley Milgram in 1960 after World War II and the Holocaust. Part 2. Who is Stanley Milgram? Stanley Milgram is a PhD Harvard graduate and was an assistant Yale professor at the time of his study. Milgram wished to understand the factors that led to people inflicting harm on others after being acutely aware of his Jewish heritage from his youth and the history of the Holocaust. Part 3. What did Stanley Milgram predict would happen in the study? Stanley Milgram predicted that only about 0% to 3% of the test subjects would inflict the most extreme voltage shocks. Stanley Milgram was proven wrong in his pilot study, which showed most of the participants continuing to extreme voltage. Part 4. How was the Milgram experiment conducted? A single trial consisted of 3 people, a test subject, an outside volunteer who thought the study was a learning experiment about punishment and memory, an authoritative figure, the experimenter, a hired actor, and a helpless victim, the learner, another hired actor. In this trial, the authoritative figure instructed the test subject to inflict seemingly painful shocks to the helpless victim when a question was answered incorrectly during a series of questions, increasing the voltage with each incorrect answer. The helpless victim was instructed, without the knowledge of the test subject, to bang on the wall, cry in pain, plead, or complain about an imaginary heart condition after a certain strength of a voltage current. The proximity of the test subject and the helpless victim showed results that differed a bit from one another. If the test subject and the helpless victim were separated and couldn't see one another, the test subject tended to continue to the higher voltages, versus when the test subject and the helpless victim were in close proximity with one another, the test subject tended to show more disapproval, but continued participating in the study. The Milgram experiment is controversial due to tests being a controlled environment and unable to simulate all outside factors, which leaves the study up for debate. Part 5. How does the Milgram experiment connect to the novel Night by Elie Wiesel? The novel Night takes place during the Holocaust and a 15-year-old's firsthand experience of being deported from his hometown and moved into a concentration camp. The Milgram's experiment's focus was to try and understand what factors influenced others to inflict harm. The study, while being controversial and unable to explain all the motivations one could have, does explain a few potential binding factors, such as consistency, obligation, and situational definition. Consistency refers to acknowledging the current action is wrong, which would also be acknowledging previous actions were wrong. Obligation refers to a deal being made that one does not want to break. Finally, situational definition refers to someone following another because they believe they are legitimate, knowledgeable, and/or competent in making the following decisions. Part 6. What significance does the Milgram experiment have? The Milgram experiment demonstrated an example of a real-life instance where extreme and destructive obedience was exhibited. Let's review. In this crash course, we learned what the Milgram experiment is, how the Milgram experiment connected to the novel Night by Elie Wiesel, and the significance the Milgram experiment had. This is Morgan Grady signing off.